There are judges and there are legends. And it is rightly said that if it takes only one man to walk on the path of justice, and the life and judgments of Justice S Muralidhar embody this essence in totality. And why I say this? Because while his judgments had made a difference in India and had faced certain resistance also in the country, it is thousands of miles away from the country abroad that his judgments are now shining. Justice S. Muralidhar, thank you so much for talking to India abroad and sparing your crucial time for us. You really,
Yeah.
we've seen your judgments in India, and we've seen the kind of difference they've made, the way they have also challenged a set of a notion within the society, but have also set an example for so many young judges of the country. But today we are talking about one of your reports that you prepared as in the capacity of the chair of the Commission of Inquiry on the Occupied Palestinian Territory, along with the other judges. And it talks about the kind of mistreatment, the absolute brutality that has been meted out with Palestinian children, thousands of children killed. So the first question that I would want to ask you from the report is that there have been several reports about Israeli forces targeting Palestinian population, children in the past. But the latest report prepared by your commission states that the Israeli forces have been deliberately targeting children with an intention to orchestrate a genocide. It states that there's been usage of sniper rifles, drones, and quadcopters to target children, suggesting that even in certain cases, there's a clear indication that a target is a child, and still the child has been targeted by Israeli forces. And in some cases, the report notes that adults were spared while children were targeted specifically. So, is this consistent with previous reports on the subject, sir, and how different it is?
See, in September 2025, this very commission gave a very detailed report on genocide. Now, there are six broad elements to what constitutes genocide. You have to have one or more of the factors that constitute it. I won't get into the technicalities, but one of those factors is preventing childbirths of a group. So this report further corroborates what the September 2025 report on genocide says, that there's a very deliberate intent. It displays an intent of the Israeli defense forces to ensure there's no continuity of the Palestinian group. So preventing childbirths is one element, but it's not just childbirths. I think what this report says is, apart from not allowing children to be born, there's a specific targeting of the existing children. So this report makes a very clear linkage. It says children constitute the social and biological continuity of any group, and in this case, the Palestinian group, which is why it explains the thinking of the far right politicians in Israel that children are seen as an enemy by them, and that every child in Gaza, the deputy speaker of the Israeli Knesset, is on record as saying that every child born in Gaza is born as a terrorist. So, with that kind of an outlook, which has permeated into the Israeli defense forces, it seems to be that children are being made a very deliberate target. The second thing people ask me is what is so different about this report from the earlier reports? See, this report clearly demonstrates through medical evidence, through forensic evidence, that children are targeted by two ways. One is that during airstrikes, there's intense bombing of the densely populated areas in Gaza. This has happened over a period of 2 years. It is also continuing now, but the intensity was very, pronounced in the 2 years between 7th October 23 and 7th October 25.
Right.
Any country planning such a campaign like Israel did would know that children in any population would constitute a sizable number, and that among the fatalities, even if you take natural disasters, man-made disasters, whatever, you will find the children are most vulnerable and they
Right.
disproportionately suffer. And the same thing happened here, even within the first few airstrikes, it became clear that children were dying in larger numbers than adults.
Right.
And as we now know, 30% of all the fatalities in these 2 years were of children. Now, despite knowing that children will die in larger numbers, the Israeli government did not stop its campaign. So this was one clear indication of the intent. The second was what I think I've spoken in several fora already, the body parts of the children which were targeted, that is the head and the neck, and the upper torso of the body. So this, the doctors have confirmed to us, is bound to cause a large number of fatalities. They use tube-shaped pellets, and the doctor showed us photographs of the dead bodies of children with numerous bullet holes, square-shaped bullet holes. They were tungsten-dipped bullets, which would destroy the tissues. So if it enters the body, it will destroy the internal organs completely. So this was specifically, therefore, intended for children. And if you see the bullet wound, it's straight through the head, it's through the neck, and it's a pattern. So there is a press agency in Netherlands which has been commended for the investigative work it has done in unearthing 113 cases of children in Gaza over a period of 30 of the hostilities with bullet wounds to the head and the neck. So when children are brought in with that kind of attacks, I mean injuries, it's very difficult to save them. Then the third element which told us was children were not involved in any hostilities. The kind of cases we have documented in this report are cases of some 10-day-old baby being shot through the head while being breastfed, a 4-year-old girl who's walking with an adult, children who are playing outside their tent, children who are looking for aid, the food. You've seen those pathetic images of the aid parcels being flung and children running helter skelter chasing them.
True.
So children are being shot when they're in these kinds of situations. So they're not in situations of hostilities. So you can't have them as legitimate targets. You can't even say, "Oh, I have done it in self-defense." So these factors told us that children are being deliberately targeted. They're the most vulnerable. We also see it in combination of other things. 5 of the 6 pediatric hospitals were completely destroyed. The neonatal facilities destroyed, which means babies don't get incubators, newly born babies. There are several instances of stillbirths, grossly underweight births. There's a fetus which was just 900 grams when the mother gave birth to it. And then reproductive rights are being attacked. So pregnant mothers are malnourished, and they are not getting the necessary supplements and medicines to have a healthy delivery. So there are various ways in which they're making sure either children are not born or the children that are in Gaza are not allowed to survive. Then you've destroyed their schools. Then there's no shelter. At very short notice, demolition takes place, which means people have no time even to gather their belongings. And children have to run with the adults.
Right. If I may just
So,
interrupt you here,
yeah.
with the kind of descriptions that you've given us of your findings, it is clear that what Israel is doing is in line with its deputy speaker's comments that, who had told their forces not to leave a child behind. And, that came soon after the assault by Hamas on Israel in October 2023. So can we say that this is a clear-cut way to ensure that the Arab lineage in Palestine doesn't continue, and that is to avenge the October 2023 attacks that, this kind of a modus operandi is being resorted to by the Israeli forces?
See, I think the better way of looking at it is to even go back in history. It's not that these hostilities just began today.
Right.
The hostilities have been there for some decades now. But incidents like the 7th October 2023, Hamas taking Israelis hostages, Hamas killing them in large numbers, it becomes then the further flashpoint and the trigger for even more intense hostilities. So there are points in this history of this region, and particularly this conflict, which dates back to the 40s, that that we see that the intensity of the attacks increases, and that it is genocidal has been stated by us in our September 2025 report itself.
Right.
This further corroborates that.
Right. So the report has also found that the commission finds a systematic pattern where Israeli security forces often refer to Palestinian boys as terrorists, like you pointed out, in an attempt to justify their murder of the children. And further, Palestinian boys are being subjected to severe torture inside Israeli prisons as well, like you pointed out in your report. Several of such children who've been released continue to suffer from diseases, pain, and mental trauma. How can international aid organizations in such a situation reach out to such people, given that Israel has been blocking access to Gaza and not even allowing ICJ rulings to be implemented?
Yeah, it is a challenge. Actually, the international organizations are also controlled by the international community of nations. And the P5 that we say in the Security Council have a big say in how these agencies work. Let me mention WHO or UNICEF or any of the known agencies, ICRC for that matter, the International Red Cross. Now, all these agencies are hamstrung because their affairs are controlled, whether financially or otherwise, by these countries, not just the P5, but a whole bunch of countries. So everything is therefore linked to geopolitics, and which is the
Right.
most unfortunate part. So, which is why we are urging, whenever we make a presentation, we made presentation before the European Union, before the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, before the Security Council. We're urging that when it comes to humanitarian aid in Gaza, we must be able to put aside these
Right.
geopolitical considerations and allow the international aid agencies, including the UN bodies themselves, to carry out their tasks. Because we are watching right in front of our eyes children die of starvation, children die for want of medical aid, and these are not children who can be accused, even by any stretch of imagination, of indulging in hostilities against Israel, which will
Right.
justify this kind of a reprisal by Israel. So the international community should be stirred into action. This is what we expect and hope.
Right. Continuing with the same question, Israel has not only banned entry of aid groups in Gaza, but has also killed hundreds of humanitarian workers. Plus,
Correct.
health reporters have reported harassment and smear
Mhm.
campaigns targeting them. Now, in such a scenario, there's a sense of hopelessness within the aid agencies and also the media over the so-called impossibility of containment of Israel as a nation and its policies, given the kind of support that it also draws from, like you rightly mentioned, some of the nations, some of the most developed nations of the world, including the United States. So, how can then the UN work around this situation?
See, we must acknowledge that this set of hostility, this period of hostilities in Palestine, has triggered two of the major international adjudicatory bodies. One is the International Court of Justice, where South Africa has filed a case against Israel, and which is an ongoing case, and in which I think you earlier mentioned three provisional orders have been passed by the International Court of Justice, the
ICC.
ICJ. There is also another proceeding before the International Criminal Court. That court has issued warrants for the arrest of Netanyahu and certain others. It's a
Right.
different matter that it's a struggle to get that implemented. Sanctions have been imposed on three of those judges in the International Criminal Court. That's that apart. Both these mechanisms have been activated and are continuing. So we are
Right.
hoping that reports like ours, which is literally a fact-gathering investigative report, will help those proceedings continue, and the evidence gathered by us can be used, can be further gone into by them, and our evidence gathering protocols are aligned with both these bodies. Thirdly, in our report in para 356, we've mentioned the brigades, units, and divisions of the Israeli Defense Forces that were involved in particular instances of violations of international human rights law and humanitarian law.
Right.
Now, it is possible for countries around the world to investigate the role of individual members of the Israel Defense Forces, which would include their own nationals. Like I've given this example before. Let's say over 2,000 French nationals are today serving on the Israeli Defense Forces. When
Right.
any of them goes back to France, France being a ratifying party to all these conventions, Geneva Conventions, child rights conventions, and so on, finds that such a person is available in its territory, France has an international obligation under these conventions to investigate the role of such a person and to prosecute such a person. It may not be only a French citizen, it could be an American citizen who's holidaying or an Israeli national who's holidaying in France. It's very
Right.
much possible for the France as a country to do it, and French courts to exercise what we call as universal jurisdiction. And I must tell you that the Hind Rajab Foundation, the case of Hind Rajab, the document has
Right.
also come out. The Hind Rajab Foundation has actually instituted cases in several countries.
Mm-hmm.
And those countries can actually reach out to this commission for sharing of evidence, which is within the mandate of this commission to do. So those legal options also exist apart from your diplomatic moves or other moves that you make as
Mm-hmm.
nations. These are other possibilities. These legal options are available, and for which this report will help. Lastly, I must say this: we should not lose hope, because this kind of documentation of contemporaneous history is very, very essential for even the future of our human civilization. We may not see within our lifetimes some of this, being brought to justice. But we should not give up hope. After what horrific incidents happened during World War II,
Right.
the pursuit of justice continued for decades thereafter.
Right.
So none of today's criminals should be under the expectation that they can enjoy complete immunity for all times to come. I think exercises like ours are a constant reminder, not to those criminals, but for the entire world community, that nobody should be allowed to allowed to get away unpunished
Mm-hmm.
for horrific crimes against humanity, war crimes, and genocide.
Right. So, a glaring fact that has been brought out by a report has been the blatant posting of violence related videos on social media by Israeli soldiers, including the killings of a 14-year-old boy in Tubas, then a shooting and killing of a 10-year-old boy in front of his house in West Bank. Do you think this should be controlled, or do you think that there shouldn't be and there should not be any restriction on such videos, because that's how the world actually gets to know about what the forces are up to in Gaza?
Yeah, actually, this has been a debate. It's a larger debate whether we should have any regulation at all of what is posted on social media. I think there's merit in the contention of those who say this only fuels more hate and more
Mm-hmm.
crime. That can't be disputed at all. At the same time, like you just now pointed out, it is useful for bodies like us when we find incriminating material such as what is posted by Israeli soldiers. So it is a bit of a yes and a no, and it's difficult to give a very clear cut answer saying no, there should be no such control at all, because the way it's affecting young minds, and how it can be distorted, it can be manipulated. So all these are great causes for concern. So even when we find these videos, and this your viewers should know, or whoever is watching this should know, we don't take it as granted, as if it's the truth. We further investigate, we look at the metadata, we look at geolocation, chronolocation, we look at satellite imagery, and we are fully aware that this kind of evidence can be manipulated, distorted, morphed. So we're extra cautious in just playing reliance on this kind of evidence.
Right.
So that danger does exist, that all of this could be misused. And this commission is very, very clear that it will not rely on just one such piece of evidence, but will seek corroboration from many other sources.
Right. So the recommendations of your commission to the UNSC include the prohibition of all two-way military-related trade with Israel and imposition of immediate and comprehensive sanctions on the country. Now, given the presence of US, the biggest backer of Israel and the most developed nation in the world, in the UNSC, do you think the body would ever be able to implement this? How do you see this?
No, see, as a chair of a commission which has made these recommendations, we make them in expectation that it will be acted upon.
Right.
We are not so cynical to say, oh, we'll make these recommendations, but we know it won't be implemented. That's not how we look at it at all. We are making these recommendations in the expectation and the hope that countries around the world, including the Security Council, will in fact act upon it. See, there is a board of peace which has been endorsed by the
Right.
Security Council. We have asked that you convene a board of peace, and we'll make our presentations to it, because
Mhm.
it has been formed with the avowed objective of ending hostilities in Gaza and ensuring humanitarian aid into Gaza. We want to present this report to tell that board of peace what the ground reality is and what it should do in the immediate,
Mhm.
in the immediate, so that it doesn't postpone the release of aid into Gaza to
Right.
a point when more fatalities occur. So it is always with the hope and expectation that sense will prevail, better sense will prevail on all countries involved, and that the most obvious humanitarian aid into Gaza is allowed to be provided.
Right. So the recommendations of your commission to the UNGA include adoption of a resolution calling in member states to prohibit all two-way military-related aid and also impose sanctions against Israel for its violation of international law in the occupied Palestinian territory. The recommendations to the UN Secretary General, in fact, include expansion of existing listing of Israeli security and armed forces in annexes of annual report on children and armed conflict to also include abduction of Palestinian children in line with the findings of this report and listing of Israeli settlers as extension of the state of Israel. Because your report points out how settlers have also been
Mm.
resorting to brutality against Palestinian children, especially. Now, what are your hopes from the UNGA and the UN Secretary General for achieving these?
The answer is the same. In fact, I think it's a repeat of the earlier question. We do expect them to do what we've recommended that they should do.
Mhm. Right. And
We are, we do have that hope and we do have that expectation.
right. Now, the Commission has also made important recommendations to Israel, which include halting military operations in Gaza, precaution in use of force, end use of high impact weapons, as well as quadcopters, like you pointed out, and drones and snipers, and immediate implementation of orders of provisional measures of January 26, March 28, and also May 24, 2024 of the International Court of Justice, like we were discussing earlier. Now, in the case ending application of Convention on Prevention and Punishment of Genocide in Gaza Strip, and also the advisory opinion of July 19, 2024, and ending unlawful occupation. Now, given that 13 requests made for information and access to Israel went unanswered, like you've pointed out in in your some of your interviews. Do you think Israel can ever come around to accept these, and can we? How can the international community bring Israel to accepting these in the future?
See, there are so many options available to the international community. They have done it vis-a-vis individual countries earlier. And like I said earlier, I think was we make these recommendations in the hope that the countries will in fact accept these recommendations and act on it. That they have not done it in the past should not make us lose all hope, right? With more and more evidence coming, and which makes the conduct even more stark, there
Mhm.
should be there's only an increased expectation that with this kind of stark findings, the countries will get their act together and actually compel Israel to change its tactics and change course.
Right. The report also mentions that Israel has indulged in deliberate targeting of children with an intent to destroy the biological continuity and future existence of Palestinian groups in Gaza. Now, in that kind of a scenario, you have, and your report has likely concluded it to be a genocide. Now, proving that it is a genocide is a very difficult procedure in itself. International bodies, there's so many laws in place when one has to prove that a nation has resorted to genocide. So, how to ensure that at the end of the day, this is accepted as a genocide by the international community and also the other bodies of the UN? Of course, apart from Commission, which has done fantastic work on the subject, how do we ensure that the other bodies also, including the UNSC and the UNGA, also come around and accept it as a genocide, proving which has been very, very difficult in the past?
If you look at both the Nuremberg trials and Tokyo trials, I think if you'd asked the people there, do you really think you're going to be able to do your job? They would have told you, of course, we think the evidence that we have is going to help us prove. And many of those cases did get proved. This is an evidence gathering body. We have placed the evidence before the world community. We are also placing it before the ICJ and the ICC. Those are the adjudicatory bodies. And we believe that this evidence is sufficient for them to further investigate if they wish to. And if ever they want to test this evidence during trial, that it will help in proving these offenses. And I don't think we should give up this whole exercise saying, oh, it can't be proved, oh, it can't be done. The question itself is a very, very negatively loaded question. I don't know why you have so much doubt, despite knowing that in Nuremberg trials there were so many convictions and executions. In the Tokyo trials, there were convictions and execution. In the International Tribunal for Yugoslavia, there were convictions and the International Tribunal for Rwanda, International Tribunal for Cambodia. I think this question ignores all the efforts made by so many bodies over so many years, gathering evidence, which have resulted in successful trials and convictions. It may have taken time, but I think the question ignores history. And the question is loaded in cynicism, which is unwanted. There's so much hard work done by not just this commission, but so many other mandates painstakingly gathering, I must say, painstakingly gathering evidence so that that evidence will stand the test in a court of law. That's why this whole exercise is for. Please don't leave the viewers with the impression that all of this is a futile exercise. It is not. In the past, also, it has not. In the present, also, it will not. So please don't, lend yourself to cynicism and to this kind of skepticism. We must be remaining positive with hope, because there are children in Gaza and there are Palestinians in Gaza dying in thousands over the last 2 years, who are the surviving family members are living with hope. Let's not
Right.
destroy their hopes. Let's not be so negative about everything that we're doing.
Mhm. The Commission has also recommended to the UN Secretary General to expand the existing listing of Israeli forces in the annual report on children and armed conflict, to also include abduction in line with the findings of the report. Now, of course, we mentioned about listing of Israeli settlers as extensions of the Israeli state, and issue dedicated standalone country-specific reports on the situation of children in the occupied Palestinian territory, and prioritize monitoring and reporting of sexual violence of Palestinian children by Israel, and incorporate denial of humanitarian assistance in the future UN action plan with Israel. Uh, Given UN is now heading towards an election of the new Secretary General, what steps can the Commission take to ensure that these issues become a priority for the next Secretary General also?
It's not just about this. Like right now, there's something happening in Sudan, something happening in Congo. We are not the only commission. There are several such commissions, and
Right.
the plate is full for anybody who takes over as Secretary General.
Mm-hmm.
If for some Secretary General to say, "Oh, Sudan is not a priority for me, only Gaza is," will it's nobody's even remotely going to suggest that. Human suffering is human suffering everywhere and anywhere in the world. All right,
Mm-hmm.
what's happening with the Rohingyas? What's happening with, even now, in Ukraine, in many parts of the world, how
Mm-hmm.
children are suffering all over the world. No Secretary General can say, "Oh, this conflict is of a greater priority for me than this," and no commission to such should suggest to a Secretary General, "No, no, put aside everything else and only focus on what we have said." That is now how not how the UN system works or should work. Right. Human
Right.
suffering is human suffering. Errant conduct of countries, there's no gradation saying, "Oh, this is the biggest villain, this is a lesser villain, and this is the least." Nothing like that. Several countries are responsible, sorry, several countries are responsible for what is happening in Gaza. And we have to look at the world community as a whole to accept those responsibilities, behave in a more responsible manner, and respond to these problems more effectively.
Right.
And we are not here to let me also make this clear. We are an investigating body. We are not here, we are not giving some verdict or some direction or something, right? This investigating body feeds into the adjudicatory mechanisms of international adjudicatory tribunals. All right.
Mhm.
We
Right.
do make recommendations because in the immediate we think some things have to be done. So beyond that, I think it's not correct for anybody, much less this, to suggest to the future Secretary General that, "Oh, sir, we think this should be your priority." That's not even correct.
Right. So India also supplies arms to Israel and has grown considerably closer to the country more than ever over the past decade. In fact, what role can India play to ensure that international pressure on Israel is created? What is your opinion on that?
It's more than an opinion. Let me tell you, it's a very obvious thing. India is among the several countries which subscribes to the international legal order, right? We are part of the United Nations. We are vitally interested in the good, efficient working of all international mechanisms. I
Right.
gave this example earlier also when one of our citizens was wrongly captured by Pakistan, denied a fair trial by Pakistan. India went before the International Court of Justice. And India got a favorable order before that tribunal. And that order was implemented. And I'm sure if it had not been implemented, India would have made all the moves to ensure that it is implemented. So it is
Right.
in interest of not only India, but many other countries in the world that these mechanisms are allowed to work properly, their verdicts are taken seriously, and we arrange our affairs with other countries conscious of our own responsibility as a member of the United Nations, as well as the other country which is also a member of the United Nations. In diplomatic circles, there are so many ways of negotiating these things. Nobody needs to suggest to the government of India what it should do. But if the government of India takes a look at all that is happening, I'm sure they will, see what is appropriate to be done in the circumstances.
Right. So my last question to you would definitely be, how you view an episode almost 6 years old when when you were transferred, and that had made headlines after a judgment which was not considered too, which was not seen as being taken very nicely by the regime that time. How do you look at those events in the hindsight, and today you're making global headlines? How do you look at that episode now?
Actually, today the focus should not be on me at all. It should be on the situation in Gaza. I would urge all of you, even media persons, don't put the focus on me. We need to urgently address everything that is happening there in Palestine. And we have to ensure justice to those in Palestine. All right.
Right.
And not just those in Palestine. I must also add this, and this is something that I've been reiterating. This commission looks at all human rights violations, not only in the occupied Palestinian territory, but also in Israel.
Mhm.
So we are keen to ensure that justice is done to all in that region, to all victims. It could be even Israeli victims, it could be Palestinian victims, it could be others. But this commission's work and its findings pertain to all violations. Like we gave a report on the 7th October 2023 incident, where we've
Mhm.
listed out all the atrocities committed by Hamas vis-a-vis Israeli citizens. So this is the real mandate of this commission, and the focus should not be, with the greatest thing to you, the focus should not be on me at all at this point in time. It should be on the work of this commission, which, as you rightly pointed out, involves not just me, but involves Justice Florence Mumba, Mr. Chris Sidoti, and there's a whole dedicated team of people working behind the scenes,
Right.
and who are spending hours and hours, days and days, poring over all material to ensure that their findings are supported by solid evidence. So
Right.
that should be the focus.
Just one, signing off thought. Officials involved in international accountability work have, broadly faced growing pressure, including U.S. sanctions on ICC judges and Palestinian rights groups linked to the court investigations into Israeli crimes. And I'd read that you've said that there are risks, but you need to learn to take these risks. Having said that, what are your expectations from not only the media but also from the international community, and especially the P5, the big nations of this world, on how to ensure that at least the bodies that are trying to do work to for the benefit, for the good of the oppressed, not only in Gaza but across the world, are at least given free hand to do the good work that they're trying to do.
Yeah, you've answered the question yourself. They ought to support all these bodies. They ought to cooperate with each other in ensuring that the work of such bodies is not frustrated, because so much hope is, lays with the people who are suffering, that these bodies will help their voices reach the larger world community and some positive corrective action is taken. And that's what one hopes.
Right. Thank you so much, Justice Muralidhar, for your time, and we hope that we get more such reports from you. That we can ponder on, and that can, of course, make global headlines and also bring about change. That is the most important aspect in the aftermath, and that's what is lacking. Thank you so much. Keep watching India
Thank you.
Abroad and stay tuned. Thank you.